What's going on, guys? It's Tyler from Paraben Supply, and I'm here with the rest of the team for something a little bit different. This week, we're going to do a deep dive on styles of dark beer and give our picks and impressions for each style. Let's get going. So, right off the bat, we're going to start with everyone's favorite subject, a bit of brewing nomenclature. So when brewers want to express to each other or their customers how dark or what flavor profile a beer is going to have, they are going to use a scale called the SRM scale, or the Standard Reference Method scale. This is a scale from 0 to 40 and helps brewers communicate different things about their beer, so the darkness and the flavor, among other things. For this roundup, we're going to focus on beers that clock in at over 17 on the SRM scale. So this means we're going to leave beers like a double IPA on the shelf, but pick up beers like this dark lager and those similar styles. And to keep this guide manageable, we're not going to get overly granular with styles that are fairly similar to one another. If you decide that dark beer is your thing, and it certainly is for me, it can be a wonderful style to explore because there is so much variation and different styles that are similar but complex in their own right. So it's definitely a world to explore on your own. To make this easy, we're also going to use a 2-axis scale to classify these beers relative to each other. On the y-axis, we're going to have the residual sugar of the beer, so how sweet or dry the impression that it gives in your mouth. And on the x-axis, we're going to do a roastiness, bitterness scale. So these flavors are quite similar and will help you get an impression of the beer without tasting it, as well as classify the beers, again, relative to each other. And now our styles. We're going to do 8 styles of beer to give our quick overview of dark styles. And drum roll, please. Our styles are a dark lager, a Schwarzbier, a Scottish ale, an oatmeal stout, a dry stout, a Baltic Porter, an imperial stout, and a dark Belgian ale. So let's get tasting. To avoid roasting our taste buds off the bat, we're going to start with beers that give more of a dry, low roast / bitterness impression, and move to beers that are a little bit more intense.
So let's get going.
So to start, we're going to start with our lightest and easiest to drink segment, which includes our Schwarzbier, which is a smoked dark lager, and just a straight up dark lager. The first one is a simple dark lager, which basically takes the style and the flavors that you usually associate with lagers, that lightness and the crispness, and uses a little bit darker malts to get that roasty character that you normally associate with dark beer without the heaviness and the sweetness that you might otherwise get along with it. Let's go ahead and taste this guy.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Ooh, I definitely get what they were saying about kind of that lager element. Like, it's still actually pretty light, but it feels like it should have a much heavier mouthfeel than it does.
No, definitely, and it's a style that allows you to definitely explore the more roasty, dark side of beer without necessarily having to deal with the added sugar or the other elements that maybe some people don't necessarily like about dark beer.
Yeah, it's a really good intro dark beer.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And then the other style that we're going to look at today is a Schwarzbier. So this is very similar to a dark lager, but incorporates smoked malts, which means that it's going to have that smoky sort of roasty element that adds something on top of just the roasty notes you get from the malt in something like a dark lager. Let's give this guy a taste.
We're cheersing every time.
We're going to cheers every
Cheers! Every time.
So it's interesting. You can definitely taste the flavors that you get from the dark lager, but then there is that extra little bit
It's
of
an added sort of layer, added complexity to it.
smoke. Yeah, and it's not like the smoke you get in whiskey, where it comes from a barrel that's been burned. It's actually, I feel it's more of a interactive and vibrant smoke character.
Yeah.
So for these lighter beers, we're going to classify them as a little bit lower roast and bitterness, as well as fairly dry. So these are easy drinking, approachable dark beers that are great for people who might just be getting into the style. I would say the Schwarzbier is a little bit darker than the dark lager, so we're going to classify it as such.
And it's definitely one of those beers that makes you want to drink more of it.
It's a good one, yeah. It's definitely a style that you could have more than one. I feel like with certain dark beers, you can have one and that's it, whereas the dark lagers are, and they're super approachable.
Yeah.
And even in the summertime, they're
Yeah.
all times of year, any time of day. Like they're just approachable dark beers. So
Yeah.
And let's move into the darker beers that have more body and substance.
So now that we're done with our lighter offerings, we can move into beers that you would normally associate more with the traditional adjectives that you would use to describe dark beers. So these are a little bit sweeter. Again, the roastiness and the sweetness and all of the elements that we were talking about before are just turned up a little bit. So the first one we're going to talk about is a dry porter, which is actually probably one of my personal favorite dark beers. It combines a lot of the more intense flavors you get with porter styles, but again, it's like really nice and dry and easy to drink. And then on the other side, we have a Scottish ale, which is a little bit less roasty, but definitely has more sweetness and shows the residual sweetness that we're going to talk about in styles a little bit later. So let's give these guys a taste. So we're going to start off with the dry porter. Again, like I said, this is one that is made in the style of a lot of the darker beers that we're going to see coming up, but is fermented down to a similar dry finish as the lagers, or the lager and the Schwartz beer that we saw before. So let's give it a try. Cheers.
Cheers again.
Cheers.
So if you smell it, it's a little bit darker, but then the flavor...
It's kind of raisiny.
Yeah, so raisins is a flavor that a lot of people use to describe dark beer. And you get a little bit of that, but it's also quite light.
I definitely taste a little bit more carbonation in this one than the last one.
Yeah. It has a bit more of a smoothness, I find. A bit sweeter, but it's still not super heavy.
It's snappy.
It's snappy, yeah.
Right. So, and I think like that's what sort of sets like this style apart from the darker beers that we're going to get into, is that like snap.
Mm-hmm.
So the next style we've got is our Scottish ale. These are generally beers that definitely come across a little bit sweeter and a little bit heavier than what we've seen so far, but don't generally tend to be as dark as some of the other beers we're yet to see. So this is a great option for people who are looking for that warm, sort of cozy impression that some darker beers can give, but don't necessarily like the roasty, sort of bitter flavor that really, really dark beers can come across with. So let's give this guy a taste. See, almost after that dark or the dry porter, it's like a palate cleanser. Like it's not as nearly as snappy. It's got that nice little bit of sweetness to it, but still with that dark sort of general palate, right? You get that maltiness, you get the sweetness. It's not super carbonated, not hoppy, right?
This one tastes a lot like fruitier.
Yeah, it's definitely more like approachable, and like because it's sort of an English style of yeast, well, a Scottish style of yeast, forgive me, you get a little bit more of that fruitiness. It has less of maybe like what some people would call like a clean fermentation profile, so you get a little bit more flavor coming off of the yeast in this as well.
Yeah, this one feels a lot more like the lagers did. Like it's not as carbonated, it's a lot like smoother.
But it's sweeter as well.
Yeah.
Like where the lagers were super dry and refreshing, this has got a little bit more body.
Halfway!
And finally, here we are at the big beers. These aren't quite as big as dark beers can be. We still have one additional layer after this. But these are beers that have a good amount of alcohol, which is another big indicator of like a big dark beer, as well as the residual sugar and the increased bitter roasty flavors. Again, we're just slowly turning the volume up on that aspect of our flavor. So I think we're going to start with the oatmeal stout. The basic difference between oatmeal stouts and other stouts is the addition of oats in the brewing process. When you mash oats together with barley, when you make beer, the proteins in the oats will add body to the beer, which will make it have that heavier mouthfeel that we sort of saw with some of the other beers without necessarily adding sugar. So it's a really nice way to have that luxurious flavor that you get with a thicker beer without necessarily adding the sweetness and the extra heavy sort of weight that comes with that. So, cheers.
Cheers.
Like the cheers consistency.
So you can see, we're slowly turning it up, but it's a very approachable style. We haven't quite gotten into the stuff that's, fruitcake flavored, which, we'll get there, but it's very much a dark beer, right?
Yeah.
It's darker than, like, I would say, like Guinness, which I think is like a dark beer that a lot comes to people's minds. The flavor has that sort of impenetrable sort of aspect to it, but it's still very approachable. You could drink more than one.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I like this one quite a lot, actually.
No, oatmeal stouts is definitely like a really, it's definitely in the top 5 styles of dark beer you should try first if you're not necessarily familiar with them.
Yeah.
It's a really nice richness.
It
feels very luxuriant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that comes from the addition of oats in the process.
I felt like with some of the other ones, there was like maybe like a bottom and like a top, but this one has like all of the flavor
It's all
profiles in
blended
there.
together,
Yeah.
And it sort of cushions the sharpness as well.
Yeah, I also really like the label for this one. It's super cute.
Little kids.
So, great addition.
We can do this, guys.
But yeah, I definitely think this one is a lot more full than the other ones that we've tried.
Definitely.
I'm
but not overwhelming.
Yeah, I'm like surprised that I like this one, but I do quite like it.
Okay, second in our batch of bigger dark beers, we have a Baltic Porter. So this is a style that is brewed like a big ale, which ales have more of a yeast profile to them, whereas lagers generally ferment very cleanly and leave very little sort of yeasty profile behind. So a Baltic Porter is a beer that is fermented with a lot of alcohol, a lot of flavor, like a very big ale, but with lager yeast. Okay. So you get a lot of that big beer complexity. It's aged for up to 3 years. It's got a lot of alcohol, a lot of malt, a lot of flavor, but it's brewed with ale or lager yeast, which definitely sort of dials back the intensity a little bit. So it's a big beer for people who don't necessarily like huge beers, if that makes sense.
Okay, gotta cheers.
So like you can see, compared with the oatmeal stout, similar flavors, but you get that like syrupy quality.
Oh yeah, it's got like a funky smell to it.
Yeah. That again, it's like that
almost
syrupy
like
quality.
A cherry liquor.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of people, it's like fruitcake.
Yeah.
Where you get that.
Do you know, I've never actually had fruitcake.
Well, there you go.
It's a lot like this, but just with more fruit.
Yeah.
And like weird dry cake around it.
Yeah.
It's better.
Yeah.
Better.
This is but you get that like very intense like fruitiness, that thick sort of cakey kind of vibe, but it's not as heavy as I think other styles you'll see like can get.
It's got like a little bit of chocolate in there too.
Yep, chocolate, and then like again that smokiness coming back.
Yeah.
They're using a little bit of that smoke malt that we saw in like earlier styles to again just like add another layer.
Yeah.
So you see like as we get larger and larger, and I use like big beers to refer to both the alcohol content and the flavor, you're just developing on themes, right?
Yeah. So where does this fall on our scale?
I would definitely say that we're up to our sort of extremes on our scale. I would say it's probably about as sweet you're gonna see.
Yeah, it is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
But isn't overly roasty. Like I would say some of the beers that we saw before, like the dry porter was roastier than this. It definitely is very round.
Yeah.
And last in our bigger but not as big category of beer, we have a dark Belgian beer. So Belgian beers are a pretty large style, but generally they're characterized by the presence of yeast and yeast flavors in the beer. So you're going to get a lot more fruitiness, you're going to get a lot more like yeast funk in these beers that we've seen before. In my mind, this still is classified as like a big dark beer. It's not super dark in terms of color, but you get a lot of alcohol. This comes in I think at 9% or something like that. And a lot of the same flavors and themes that we've been talking about are present here, along with that Belgian sort of yeast profile. So let's give it a shot.
Cheers.
This one, it has a less intense kind of nose than the...
Definitely.
Yeah, the last one that we just tried.
The yeast and like those flavors definitely takes, I think, a bit of a bigger portion.
Well, I would say it's
Out
not
there.
as... It tastes less sweet to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's less syrupy.
Yeah.
Less syrupy. It's a lot lighter, a lot more like carbonated, a lot bubblier.
But you definitely get a lot of those same like big flavors.
Yeah, it is a bold beer for sure.
So there you go. There's our sort of approaching big beer category, and we have one more style that is definitely in a category of its own, an imperial stout. So let's take a look at that guy. Okay.
All right, well, one final cheers.
One final
Final
cheers.
cheers.
The biggest cheers of them all.
I definitely.
So we can see it's
Yeah.
just like all of the things. It's like syrupy and alcoholic and roasty and like, but also I wouldn't necessarily say it's unbalanced. Like you
No,
definitely
it's
finish it.
pretty balanced.
Right? You finish it
Yeah.
and you want to like come back for more. Now,
Yeah.
you know, this could be that this is just a very well made example, but
Good job.
generally these beers are very intense. Some of them can be like borderline inaccessible, and you get that sort of like fruitcake, coffee,
Yeah.
burnt sugar, very
I smell
intense flavors.
Coffee in this one for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. More than any of the other ones.
Yeah, which is kind of nice actually. It's waking me up a little bit.
Well, and you can also see in the style there's basically no carbonation. You can get a little bit of head, but there's basically no active bubbles
Yeah.
coming up in the beer, which is another like.
But it
sort of
feels
trademark.
different than the first ones that we tried. Like it feels a little bit more bubbly. Like it doesn't feel like a lager. But yeah, it's good. I like it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like a very balanced example of a big imperial style like this. So
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like it's a very, very intense beer, but it's very drinkable still.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Which I
being
think is surprising.
Yeah.
But enjoyable.
Yeah, I think I just want like one of them, but
yeah, it's definitely not a crush a six pack sort of beer at all, but it's super enjoyable for like how intense that it really is, right?
yeah, no, it is good. I don't drink a lot of dark beers, but I feel like kind of how we started with the lighter ones, like worked our way up. Like I almost felt a little bit more just like ready to taste like the different flavors. I don't know if I would have.
Dove in on this.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have liked it as much, but kind of like going through that progression, like I'm finding I like this a lot more. I was kind of scared of the last one, I won't lie. But this is actually really enjoyable.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
Maybe
So, yeah.
I shouldn't seem so surprised.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. There's our overview on dark styles of beer, and I think we've pretty well covered the bases. Dark beer is a style that really, you know, for how few styles that there are relative to how many styles of beer that there are in total, like you get a huge range of flavors, and it's really an interesting style to try out and explore. There's definitely a lot of intensity and a lot of variation. So if you like dark beer, and even if you don't, it's definitely a style that everyone should explore maybe at least once. If you like this sort of content, these beer roundups and that sort of thing, be sure to give us a like, comment, and subscribe, and otherwise we'll see you in the next one. One final cheers.
Final cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Woo!